KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Welcome to the Central Valley Ledger, formerly San Joaquin Spotlight. We're here in beautiful downtown Fresno at the CMAC Studios, and catty corner to CMAC Studios, there's another beautiful building with a lot of great artwork inside, and that building, if you haven't gone, is Arte Americas. And the guest this week is the executive director, Frank. Frank, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Sevag.
So I want to start by saying that I met you years ago, but in a role you were in over at KFSR, which our audience members are listening to on right now as well.
Yes.
Tell us about your KFSR background.
Well, that was a whole different lifetime, I think, for both of us. But I moved, I'm originally from the Valley, from Visalia. Moved away, and I'm one of the infamous boomerangs, they say, people who move away and then come back. I moved back to the Valley to be close to my family again. I have a background in radio, and that was my first job ever was in radio. And so when I came back, was seeking a radio gig, and I came to KFSR. I just lived for the previous 5 years in Los Angeles. I was really inspired by the station down there, KCRW. And so I came to KFSR, and at that time it was Joe Moore, who was the station manager.
Joe Moore.
He's now at the NPR, local NPR affiliate. And I started there, and soon after that I was the music director, promoted to program director. There's currently a format there called the Evening Eclectic, and that was a format that I founded, created, that was based on a radio program in Los Angeles, like KCRW, called Morning Becomes Eclectic. So that was my first foray into the Fresno radio world, and that's when I got to meet lots of people, including yourself, and actually from those first starting places, I met a lot of the people that I'm currently working together with now as colleagues.
What's interesting is that was a long time ago. I mean, I remember when I started at KFSR 17 years ago, I'm dating myself, when I met you back then years ago, and but it feels like yesterday. I mean, we had fun. It was a good time.
Absolutely. There was a lot that was taking place at that time at KFSR. There were a lot of people who were really interested in making a huge impact, and we were there was just so many different programmers, whether they were music programmers or with a Hayuj show or various other shows where there was a lot of people that were really excited about what was happening there, and there were a lot of people in Fresno who were really kind of sick and tired of commercial radio. And I think it was a very good time for radio and a good time for Fresno. And it really, I think, kind of set the pace for a lot of the creative things that are happening right now.
Well, how did you get over to the other station you're at now, KCFC?
After working at KFSR, let's say it was in 2007, after I completed Fresno State, actually moved to Bangkok, Thailand for a while.
Wait, I didn't know that. So you moved to Thailand?
Yes. I visited Thailand with my dad's a Vietnam veteran. We took a trip. We visited Vietnam, went back to all the places he was stationed. And for the final 4 months of my dad's tour, he was stationed in Thailand. I love Thai food. It's incredibly inexpensive to live there. I fell in love with the country. And I moved back. I lived there for 8 months. In the year in between my first experience there and moving there, I learned to speak fluent Thai. I actually still speak fluent Thai. And so I moved to Thailand. I bought a one-way ticket, if you can believe that, one-way airplane ticket. But then it was the same sort of thing that brought me back to Fresno the first time. I was missing my family. I came back, and my radio has always been my love. My very first job, you didn't know this either, when I was 15 years old, it's currently Q97, 97.1.
Yeah.
And when I was 15 years old, there was an ad in the paper. It was formerly in Visalia. And I went in, it was just an overnight position, just pushing buttons, they call it a PIB, a person in the building. And I was there every day recording myself, and I learned to do the radio voice, right? And so the radio voice, that was the beginning of that. So, and I came back to Fresno, I wanted to do radio, and 88.1 is another non-commercial radio station here in Fresno. And I started working with KFCF, and I was there until the Arte Americas job came up.
And that's, how did that come up? Because, I actually, one time I was at Arte America speaking to a group, and I looked and I saw you, and I'm like, Frank?
Yes.
I'm seeing you everywhere, man. But
right.
I had no idea that you worked there. How did that come about?
Everything is guided by the universe, right? Nothing happens by accident. And it was just one of those things to where there was a position that was open, and it was for a program director at Arte Americas for marketing. And I just have a long history in marketing, promotions, PR. I had a long history with the downtown revitalization efforts. I was one of the first people to move to downtown when they started building the apartments down here. I've been very connected with that entire movement. And so through those connections and through my love of downtown, I went into the position to do marketing for Arte. And interestingly, there were a lot of people, when I was doing the radio thing, the radio thing, nobody sees you, you're right? They hear you on the air, but it was kind of behind the scenes. And I moved back from Thailand. I kind of stayed behind the scenes, and people hadn't even thought or seen or heard of me in years. And it happened, I think, was with you when you saw me at Arte. You said, "Hey, Frank, how's it going?" Actually, not even knowing that I was working there. And it happened so frequently. And I didn't even tell people that I was working there, really. The former director her name was Elva Rodriguez. My other love is for business and entrepreneurship. And I was an entrepreneurship minor with Tim Stearns and Craig Sharton over at Fresno State. And so I took this business approach with Arte Americas and promoting it, feasibilities, et cetera. And so through that, just really increased the visibility of the organization. And when the former director, Elva, retired, I was promoted to executive director, which I still currently serve as executive director.
Congratulations on that.
So it was very, there was a lot of serendipity involved. And of course, as you can imagine, lots and lots of hours and hard work.
So Arte Americas is in downtown Fresno. It's right across the street from here. Is that important for it to be in downtown? I mean, what would it look like if it was somewhere else? I mean, why is it important that it's here?
Well, it's important that it's here. The importance in its downtown location is important now, I think, in the current environment that we're in, as far as where we're really building this community downtown as being this hub of cultural arts, of creativity. And Arte Americas, for those who aren't familiar, it's a Latino cultural center. It's the largest Latino cultural center, a nonprofit organization. And we are currently in our 29th year of existence. And so 29 years ago, it was a much different environment in terms of what Latino art meant. There may be exhibitions held at a museum that would feature Latino art, but sometimes it was very specific. And the mission of Arte Americas is to create a flourishing place for Latino arts in the Central Valley. And when I came into the position, and with my PR, marketing, and business background, I actually deconstructed that mission statement in many ways to analyze what the different parts of that were, to create this flourishing place. What does it mean? What is a flourishing place? To create a flourishing place for Latino arts. Is Latino arts specifically created by Latinos, right?
Well,
doesn't have to be.
See, and you're going exactly the direction I wanted to go, is how do you define Latino art? It could be so many different things.
Absolutely. So just in two very good examples, one would be there is a very well-renowned artist, Adolf Odorfer, who was not Latino. He emigrated from Europe to South America and made his way on foot and ended up in Tlaquepaque, Mexico. And this is in the 1930s. Adolf Odorfer has a very cubist sculpture over by the library downtown of Dos Amantes, Two Lovers it's called. And he's very well renowned. He lived here in Fresno. He had this series of drawings that he did while living in Mexico that captured daily life there, people making pottery, people in their just everyday lives. And we had this exhibition there, and in thinking about the fact that even though he was not himself Latino, this was really capturing a very important part of history and people's culture. Also, we have another artist named Michael Garcia, who's an artist who's from Madera. He's a local artist. He does these incredible wood pieces that Michael spent 10 years living in Japan. His work is heavily inspired by Japanese architecture. He would visit these temples that were hundreds of years old. He loved that look of weathered wood. So he creates these pieces that are inspired by that. He uses kanji script. So if you look at both of those,
how is it
Latino art?
How do you define Latino art? By looking at both of those.
So that created a beautiful base, even in analyzing what that part of the mission statement meant. So through that, that means that we celebrate different, and like by Latino art, the other thing is here in the Valley, when people think of Latino art, they automatically think of Mexican art. They think, and I did my own little non-scientific survey, right? I would tell people, what do you think of when I say Mexican art or Latino art? And what do you, I mean, and it's, people are very honest sometimes, right? Strangely, what is the first thing you think of, right? The first thing that came up so much was mariachi.
Interesting how that's interesting because, that people are saying that that's art, Mexican art. Interesting.
So when you think of Latino or Mexican art, what do you think of Mexican art form? They would say, well, mariachi music. And, or they would mention Diego Rivera. And, there's hundreds of other answers, but those came up so frequently that I started using that as part of this marketing base to say there were more than mariachi, right? And when we're thinking of Arte Americas, on top of that, we're thinking of Northern America, Central America, and South America. There are many, many countries that are not Mexico in all of that. So you have all the Central Americans, all the South Americans, but additionally, we did a lot of collaborations with different groups, including, let's say, the Fresno Folklore Society. And they would present a program of music that was featuring Appalachian music or very traditional folk music that comes from Ireland. And people would say, why are you presenting this at Arte Americas, your Latino Cultural Center? But when you sort of look into the musical etymology of a lot of Mexican music, we'll say specifically, there's these polkas in Mexico, right? Well, polkas were not invented in Mexico. It comes from polka music, which comes, and then the dominance of the fiddle and the violin in a lot of Mexican music comes from the Irish people who immigrated to Mexico when we were living there, and they, even though they couldn't speak the same language, they would play music together, and there were ways in which the music collided and collaborated. So it was always expanding what this meant. And additionally, there were the ways in which there are, even if you're thinking of country western music, there are many ways in which the vaqueros is where the word buckaroo comes from, where the vaqueros and the cowboys shared this style of music. And so at the same time, to think of that, how is that Latino art? But there are many Latinos that connect very deeply with that.
Yeah, and when I was reading, a while back, I was reading something that said in the 1700s, Mexico opened its doors for a lot of people to come in from different parts of Europe, Middle East, Asia. So you would think that that would influence the country and art in the region. So I'm glad you're bringing that up because it's a little diverse out there too.
Absolutely. And then there's just different places in Mexico itself where port cities and port areas. And there's a type of music called son jarocho music. And son jarocho music, it's a very common type of, when you see folklorico dancing, it's when they're wearing all white, and sometimes they'll have these boxes, these wooden boxes, and they dance on them. And they use these boxes as a percussion instrument. And this son jarocho music and those beats, the actual rhythms of that, come from Africa. And that dancing on those boxes actually came from when they would try to keep the slaves from connecting with their culture.
Interesting.
They would get these boxes and they would do these beats and they would do these rhythms using this percussion that they would create. Well, the people in Mexico actually picked that up, and it's from Veracruz, and so that is a very traditional Veracruz style dance, son jarocho, with specific rhythms that you can trace right back to Africa. So all of these ways in which everything, in Spanish they call it a mezclaje, a mixture. And so since I'm Mexican American, I'll often comment on the Mexican American experience in that. But for Mexico as well, that is a combination of so much of the European, so much of the indigenous, so much of the African, so much of the North American. So, and all of those combinations. Additionally, I mean, you want to make this even more complicated, you come to the fact that I'm a third generation Mexican American living here.
So, yeah,
So then I'm directly influenced by so many other things, right, that are completely non-Mexican, as it were, in some sort of stereotypical sense, whether that be rock and roll or something else, but everything which has its own roots in various other cultures. But that makes this current Latino culture.
And I imagine that there is so much more in Latino art that we in Fresno haven't been exposed to. I mean, there's so much more out there. Is one of your goals to bring different art forms here to Arte Maricas?
Yes, I think it's to expand the way that people think about what that is, to really have people question what that is, what Latino art is, because people come into any place. It doesn't matter which museum, that if it's a cultural museum, some people, they enter Arte Americas with the misnomer that everything will be in Spanish, that if they're not Latino, that they're not going to feel welcome there. I mean, it's very interesting. I've done surveys of this to find out, because I really want people to be very honest, and so we do these anonymous surveys. And I mean, for someone to, it's very honest for someone to say, I didn't think that I would feel welcome here, right? And that is an actionable piece of information. And we have this current exhibition. It's called 2 Degrees of Separation. And the concept of this is a 5-year concept. I wanted to have, it was premised on the fact that I wanted to have a show featuring all women artists. We're 29 years in existence. I'm the very first male executive director of Arte Americas. All women prior to me. So women have built this place, the women were founders, women have created Arte, have given it the strength. And in my own family, I'm one of 2 males. I have 1 male cousin, and at least 40 other women, from my aunts to my cousins to everyone. And this was premised on this fact that without these women in my life, I would never even be to where I am right now. And I mean this very honestly. I would never be the executive director of Arte Americas without this great advice and support that I've had. So there was sort of this homage. But then this other layer, so the reason it's 1 degree of separation last year, this year's 2 degrees, next year's 3 degrees of separation. The concept is we started with 12 women who've either shown at Arte Americas or connected to Arte Americas. And we had them each invite 1 woman that they knew personally, another artist. So from 12 to 24, right? That was 1 degree of separation last year. Those 12 women who were invited last year, the invitees, this year we started with them. We said, we want you to invite 12 women. So this year, another group, right? So 24 women again. Of those 24, actually ended up being, because some women invited 2, and they're all incredible artists, we can't say no. So we have actually 38. And it wasn't by design, but it was actually half Latinas, half non-Latinas. And this is representative of the fact that, the example I give to everyone is, to someone who's not Latino. I say, have you ever been to a Mexican wedding? Actually, I have. Did you feel that you weren't welcome there? Did they not get you out on the dance floor? Were you not dancing to some Mexican music, eating the Mexican food? You got a glimpse of the Mexican culture, and you were a part of that. Do you have Mexicans in your family? Do you have any friends, very good friends, who are very near and dear to you don't delineate who your friends or these special people are. In the same way, for this particular women's show, it's an allegory for so many things. So the idea A is that each year we're reaching out to some other artist who's a woman, A, but B, so just in the second year, there's a woman who's from Taipei, Taiwan, another woman from Fukushima, Japan.
So the separation, I mean, it's incredible that with that short of a separation, look at the connection.
International. And even more, here's what's even more exciting. So the woman from Taipei, Taiwan, she came to us by the recommendation of another artist. We'd never seen her work, we'd never heard of her, right? Totally brand new just in the second year. Next year, she's inviting someone, and she knows who it is already. It's a woman from Shanghai, China, which is even more patriarchal than the United States, right? We've never seen or heard of her. She's going to be 3 degrees of separation. She's going to invite someone for 4 degrees. We don't know who they are. They're going to invite someone for 5 degrees. It's going to go for 5 years. Wow. But then with all of those women, the allegory is all of them are connected to Fresno, 1 degree of separation from Fresno, 1 degree of separation from Arte Americas, 1 degree from each other, right? And it's the way that we're all connected through this entire process. And it has no bearing whether Latino, Latina, whatever they are, right? Whatever their sexual orientation is, whatever age they are. We have young women, veteran artists. So here's this connection. So that represents the Valley. That represents who we are here. That represents the Latino culture. That creates a flourishing place, right? As opposed to being exclusionary. And at the same time, we follow these shows up with our Dia de los Muertos, which is a traditional Mexican holiday. So we get back to this tradition of our culture, of the Latino culture, to be able to share that with people. But at the same time, we incorporate all these other parts of. So to answer your question, yes, we are wanting to bring new art forms. We are wanting to show different styles of art that people hadn't seen before. But through that, it actually changes people's perception of what our role is in this community, and once again, what the Latino culture is all about.
I've been to several events in your courtyard. By the way, you have a beautiful building, and I love that every time I go, I feel like there's something new going on. Do you rent your grounds out, or how does that process work? Because I've been to a couple of events that nonprofits have had, and then I've been to a celebration by the Mexican consulate.
Yes, we do rent. The thing is, we have a large outdoor venue that we use for concerts. We have concerts that begin at the end of May, and they go all the way through the end of September.
And
every
is this
single
your summer concert series?
So we have those every Friday night. Then interspersed throughout the summer, there are Saturday night concerts. And then through the year, there are organizations that we work with, including the Mexican consulate. There are many nonprofits we work with that we will partner with them, and we'll put on events out in our plaza, as we call it. We do also rent it out. We rent it out a maximum of 4 times a year for weddings or other private events. Part of that is the reason is just because we're using it so frequently that there aren't many dates that are available. And when it is available, it's in December when people don't want to be outside. But it's also to keep in mind that we're a Latino cultural center. It'd be very easy to rent it more frequently and then create that revenue. But at the same time, people would then think of it as the wedding venue and not necessarily as the Latino cultural center. And it's sort of, it's an interesting sort of business perspective on what is the best thing to do in that. But it's best to just work with other organizations and present events out there together with them.
We're running out of time this week, Frank, but what could I expect now? If I go right now to Arte Americas and view the art there, what can I expect?
Well, we just closed the 2 Degrees of Separation show, and so from mid-June through August, we are featuring a show that is an exhibition titled South of the Grapevine. Obviously, artists that are from the Los Angeles and San Diego area, but the conceptual business part of my brain going 1,000 miles an hour, what I've done I've created inroads with various galleries in Los Angeles. This is a 3-year project in and of itself, South of the Grapevine. So that in the month of July, I have 2 venues in Los Angeles where I'll be hosting an exhibition titled North of the Grapevine, where I take our Valley artists down to Los Angeles to share their work down with the
You're a busy guy.
Very busy.
How can people find out more about Arte Americas, and how can they be in touch with you?
They can find us on our website, arteamericas.org, or they can just come and visit us. We're open Thursday through Sunday. Our admission is free. We don't want to be cost prohibitive. We want people to bring their families to have the experience. And we're open generally from 11 to 5 p.m. To come by, say hello. We're a very welcoming place to be. And we actually have people who bring their drawing pads and they just come and hang out for a couple hours and get inspired by the artwork and create their own.
Why should people come out to Arte Americas? I mean, say that we're all busy, right?
Sure.
We've got our jobs, we've got our families.
Mm-hmm.
Say I'm on the fence. I'm not sure if I'm going to go visit the artwork. I like art. I've been there, by the way. Love the museum. But say I'm on the fence and I say, you know, Frank, I'm not sure if I'm going to come. Why should I come?
I think just for the fact that there are not a lot of cost-free offerings where you're going to be able to see world-class artwork. And I think that people find that they're surprised. They're surprised by how they connect with the artwork. They're surprised by what they find there. And it's whether you like art, whether you like music. I think if people look online, there's going to be something that will connect with you. Some people really only come to the concerts, they don't come into the museum. Other people, it's the other way around. We have jazz shows, we have flamenco shows. And so I think when people come in, and I think that they end up being surprised by how big it is inside, but also really the opportunity. We're featuring artists that are also showing at LACMA, at the Hammer, at the Fowler Museum in Los Angeles, and major museums in San Francisco. So to be able to get that experience.
Here in Fresno.
And the thing is you can bring your family. It's going to be family friendly, and it's welcoming.
Frank, thank you so much for coming on the program. It was nice seeing you.
Good, nice to see you again.
Interesting that I keep running into you throughout our time in Fresno, and I'm glad, by the way.
Absolutely, me too. I hope to run into you again soon.
We will, definitely. That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger, formerly San Joaquin Spotlight. Our guest this week is the Executive Director of Arte Americas, which is catty corner of the CMAC studios, which we're recording from. Thank you to the audience members watching this broadcast on Comcast 93 and AT&T 99, the CMAC channels. Also, thank you to our audience members listening to 90.7 FM KFSR Fresno. We hope you enjoyed the program this week. We couldn't do this without our volunteer crew who's in the studio making us look and sound good. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.